putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year. Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
I thought we had canceled the show. I didn't think we were doing this show anymore. So I showed up the last couple of days, and then I'm like, oh, we are still doing the show. So I was really confused.
Yeah, well, it's all right. You know, we're holding it down. That chair, I assume, is pretty cold. You know, I don't think anyone's been there for a while, so it probably feels nice.
Well, I could tell when, like, Reed or someone else sits in it because I have to prop it up because I'm so short. But I could tell when a normal-sized human being sits in this because it's usually
it's a little lower.
So, yeah. But Off the Bench, we welcome you in. Happy Tuesday. Justin Kidder with you here back. Of course, we got Casey McAllister, who was supposed to try something different and kick off the show, but he said, and I quote, I'm not the host. Now, he did have a face full of muffin, too, so that also didn't help.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I want to finish my muffin. I just want to finish my muffin. That's all.
Was it a good muffin?
It's still half 8 because we started the show. But yes, it's a delicious muffin. Banana nut muffin, my favorite type of muffin.
So you brought in a muffin, an orange, and a banana.
The best part about the orange and the
right.
banana are that those peels are going to be over there for 3-4 days.
Well, you would thought, but I don't see yesterday's peels.
Well,
I think those are in the trash.
Actually, yesterday you threw away Friday's peels.
No, I don't remember that. No, I don't think that happened.
Doesn't ring a bell? Ring a bell? I'm only disappointed I wasn't here yesterday because I didn't get to start off the show with a little yeet. I figured you were pretty jacked. I know a big wrestling guy like yourself. You know, Jey Uso, new champion. I thought you'd be yeeting all over the place.
That was the one disappointment for WrestleMania was that Jey Uso got the win. But everything else everyone else I cheer for, the Logan Paul of the world, the John Cena's of the world, they all got their wins. So, I mean, I'm actually relatively happy in the state of wrestling right now is at an all-time high for me. Could never be any better.
That seems to be the general consensus, too. Just joy across all of the wrestling fan base over the WrestleMania and the events that transpired.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, it is at a point where, like, I don't see it going anywhere but up, and it's already at the peak. So, I mean, this is like the best wrestling's ever been, I think. So you can thank John Cena for that. You can thank him for that.
Elliot, you a big John Cena fan?
No, I am not at all. And to be quite honest, talking wrestling makes my brain slow down slower than it already is. So
Mount Rushmore. WWE Mount Rushmore.
WWE Mount Rushmore, certainly The Rock, John Cena.
The guy that does
Undertaker?
the RKO.
Who's the guy with the long?
Randy Orton.
Who's the guy with the long hair?
Seth Rollins?
Don't know.
I mean, are you talking about like the Undertaker?
Yeah, sure, the Undertaker.
Okay.
What about Roman Reigns?
And then I'll do
Roman Reigns.
John Cena. Didn't John Cena's wife do it?
He doesn't have a wife. Oh, well, he
his
almost got.
ex-wife.
Yeah.
Or girlfriend. or
Almost
whatever.
got married.
Then I'll do her.
My favorite one growing up was Rey Mysterio.
There you go.
I loved the mask.
So, but there you go. That's your wrestling topic for the day. That's what we wanted to open up with. You know, we know the draft is this week. You know, we're gonna talk Reds, but we figured 2 hours of WrestleMania talk, post WrestleMania talk, would be how we do it. But no, we welcome you in off the bench. Justin Kidder, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rury, and Jacob Tissett. Let's restart this a little bit. Elliot, good morning. How are you? I'm sorry that I threw a wrestling topic your way.
Yeah,
you
it's
just
all
said
right.
it slowed you down, and that's not good when you're trying to clean the energy.
I come in the morning and I'm already I'm not a morning person, so my brain's already kind of like it's foggy a little bit, and then you talk about wrestling, and it's like I'm not even here. But yeah, I mean, it's a good morning. It's sunny. It's sunny outside, and the weather's good for the first time in forever. So we're all having fun. We're all having fun today.
And then Jacob,
How are you?
How are you? Did you shrink?
I thought we weren't. I thought that was.
Is that a new shirt?
I thought the plan was to not
to
acknowledge
not
it
talk
too.
about it in the first
But
place.
the
There's
plan-
something like different. I just can't put a finger on it.
If we had a top of the line producer here, he would have had my old hair filter ready to go.
Yeah.
To have on top of my new hair this morning, but alas, Casey is here.
He's too busy
today.
eating muffins.
That's
you
right.
know.
That's right. Muffins and fresh fruit.
Stuff in my face.
Muffins and fresh fruit. No, it was time. It was time. Had the long hair for a long time. Had to get a normal haircut. So
That's right.
it's good. We're
Looks
here.
good.
Thank you.
Looks great.
I appreciate it.
What was the motivating factor again?
I just was sick of it. Had long hair for a long time that I'd never had before, and it takes a long time to get ready and do all that whenever you don't want to wear a hat. So figured it was time to get a cut.
Now we can't do the Joe Goldberg comparison
Yeah.
anymore.
I don't think I've seen Jacob with this shorter hair since I first started
Intern,
at
probably.
Chatterbox, and then since that first month, it hasn't been this short. I told him to shave the beard yesterday,
did.
and he wouldn't do it.
You did. That would be
I have-
certifiably insane.
I've never seen him without the beard.
That drastic of a hair change and shaving the beard would be an insane move on a Monday night.
would
I
love
can
it.
never go without facial hair again. Like I didn't even grow a beard till I think 2021, and then one time I did shave it off, and my wife was like, "Please don't do that again." So it's facial hair from now on, moving forward.
Yeah,
But
I'd be shocked if I ended up shaving anytime soon. I don't see that coming in the near future.
you could have done it with the long hair, but now
Yeah.
with short hair, you can't do it. Reds, we figured we'll get into more Reds in a moment. I know we got headlines coming up, but we figured offensively they would struggle last night. We figured when you put 3 touchdowns and a field goal up that you're probably not going to pick up where you left off, and at least that's what this Reds team has showed us this season, no doubt.
Yeah, I think, what is it? We were talking about it in our group chat over the weekend. They've had 4 or 5 games where the offense has really exploded, and that was over 50% of their runs this season. So, yeah, Casey was talking about the Reds being inconsistent, and I guess the first question that comes to my mind is, are they more consistent than we think? I mean, through 23 games, they've played well in 4 or 5 of them. So I don't know really what to expect out of this team. Maybe they're telling us who they are a little bit more than we'd be willing to admit right now.
And it's certainly not good that they've lost the first game of this series, because we know what that means.
Right, the series is over.
For their last 33 when losing the first game of a series. Again, we can spend the whole day and the whole year trying to figure out who they are, but there's not a set answer to that, and that's been my problem with them for a long time now.
162 game season. It is wild that this team has us to the point to where after every loss we think the season's over, and after every win we think, oh, this team's special. So I've never experienced that in baseball before, but this team really does seem to have everyone by the emotional. We'll figure this out. We'll talk about it more coming up in a moment, because I know we got your headlines, and I didn't want to get into a Reds topic right off the bat, so my bad. You can tell I've been off for a few days. So
That's all right. That's all right.
You
We're
know?
a little rusty. We're getting it back.
We do have a little bit of big news that just broke that I
boy.
know Elliot doesn't have in his headlines because it came across my desk 22 seconds ago.
Wow.
Your Cleveland Browns at pick number 2 and the New York Giants at pick number 3 are attempting to trade back, or at least fielding calls to do so.
I wouldn't mind that.
That tells me that both or one of those 2 teams wants Shedeur Sanders and doesn't want him in the top 5.
Yeah, I don't think you could take Shedeur at 2.
Or
And
3. I think it's the same thing for both the Giants and the Browns in terms of both signed 2 quarterbacks this offseason, probably don't have a plan on starting Shedeur Sanders this year regardless of where they take him. If you can add draft capital, maybe it's a little bit more justifiable. It also seems like Abdul Carter has been put back on the table for the Browns at 2. Travis Hunter's odds moving pretty drastically. Giants talking about potentially taking him at 3 if Abdul Carter's off the board. So it leads me to believe that the Browns could be considering Abdul again.
What's funny is now I'm back on board with Travis Hunter. I've had enough people convince me now. So now I'm all in on the Travis Hunter camp, and now they won't get him. So that's how this works. But either way, we'll have more draft talk coming up around the corner. We'll talk some Reds, but we got Elliot's headlines coming up next. More off the bench when we return. Why did he do that? Why the one? Oh, yeah, because last week, it's all coming together. We welcome you back.
It's called a callback, Ken.
Yeah, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. 3, 2, 1, It's all about cadence, but there you go. Off the bench, we welcome you back. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett. We'll get to some Reds talk in a moment. Of course, obviously, after putting 24 runs up on Sunday, they followed up with a loss to the Marlins and only 3 runs in Game 1. So we'll talk about that here shortly. Duke Tobin addressed the media yesterday with the draft coming up this week. He had some interesting comments that a lot of people are dissecting and trying to kind of read into what the Bengals' plan will be, more so, not just for the first-round pick, but more so for the remainder of the draft. He had some interesting things to say regarding kind of their goal with what to do this coming up weekend. So we'll get to that here shortly as well. But before we do that, let's send it over to Elliot for Elliot's Headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's Headlines.
It's true. It's true.
Casey's just freshly unsheathed his banana over there.
Did he?
Oh, yeah.
There you go, kid. There you go, kid. We'll start with your Cincinnati Reds. They lost last night. They lose Game 1 to the Marlins 6-3. Max Meyer. You ever heard of him?
For sure.
Max Meyer for the Marlins, he went 6 innings. He allowed 5 hits. He struck out 14 Reds in 6 innings of work. 14 Reds in 6 innings of work.
Yeah, as we said yesterday, tough place to play, tough team to play against. So actually have their work cut out for them this series.
Yeah, that's what we all say. The Reds had 8 hits, including 2 more from Noelvi Marte, Lux, Hayes. They were responsible for bringing home the 3 runs that the Reds scored. Nick Lodolo, he went 5 2/3 innings, allowing 7 hits and 3 earned runs. He only struck out 4. Alexis Diaz, he came in, he gave up 3 runs immediately in his inning and a third of work. The Giants, they beat the Brewers 5-2 after falling down 2-0 early. You have the Blue Jays getting shut out by the Astros 7-0. The Braves, they scored 5 in the 8th inning to help them in their 7-6 win over the St. Louis Cardinals. That helps the Reds a little bit. The Mets, they hang on to beat the Phillies 5-4. The Phillies tried to fight back in the top of the 9th inning, scoring 4 runs. But notably, Nick Castellanos not hitting a home run yesterday. There was a lot of rumors going around that Nick Castellanos and by the way, one of the worst bits that's still going in the year 2025. That bit is officially past us.
But only if he doesn't hit home run. This is the first time he hasn't hit one in one of these events.
Yeah, but the bid is officially past us. We need people to stop doing that.
They manipulated those odds pretty drastically yesterday. I saw he opened the day at plus 550 to hit a home run.
I think it was more than that, dude. I think I saw it like plus 700.
Was it really? Wow. I saw that the graph I saw posted of the movement had it starting at 550. Maybe that was just when the bets started pouring in. But all the graphics posted by sportsbook accounts were in the 450 range.
Oh yeah.
He started the game close to 300. Some books had him in the 200s. Unbelievable. Who's betting that? Why are you betting that? Other than to just try to be a part of something, I guess.
You wanted to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
FOMO.
I guess that's what it is.
Something bigger than yourself.
Continuing on here, the Padres, they lose to the Tigers 6-4. Tigers scored 2 runs in each of the first 3 innings. The Guardians, Kinner's Guardians, they hold on to beat the Yankees 6-4. And the Red Sox, they beat the White Sox yesterday. I think that game was played at 11 a.m. 4-2. 4-2. Heading over to the National Hockey League.
Whoa, don't leave the MLB yet. We got more news.
Oh.
Especially regarding your Cincinnati Reds.
Uh-oh.
We got a game against the Braves coming up at Bristol Motor Speedway.
Okay.
Tim McGraw will be playing a pregame concert.
Wow.
At the Speedway Classic. So for the fans that are going to probably spend a lot of money on those tickets to sit 4 miles away from the baseball field, at least you'll be able to maybe see Tim McGraw on the Jumbotron as well.
What's the best Tim McGraw song? It's got to be that one where he gets.
I like Back When. Back When's funny.
I like when it's a barbecue stain on the white T-shirt. I think that's how the lyrics go. Whatever that one is, that's the one I'm choosing.
What is that? I know that song, but I don't know the name of it.
Correct.
Live Like You Were Dying?
That's not it.
Well, I was moving on.
Correct. I like that song as well. I like that one.
I like it. I love it. That's my favorite.
That's a good one.
You've ever ridden a bull named Fu Manchu?
I have not. I have not. Heading over to the NHL. The Kings, favorite song or no? You don't got any songs?
No.
All right. They can't. Why not? You
Tim
don't listen to
McGraw.
Tim McGraw. Tim McGraw. You have to know one
Bad
Tim
Father.
McGraw song. Bad Father in the Blind
in
Side.
the movie.
In the Blind
Friday
Side.
Night Lights?
Was he the father in the Friday Night Lights too? Was he really?
Yeah.
He was in the Blind Side and Friday Night Lights.
Was he in the Blind Side?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr.
He was-
Tui
he
owns
was
all
the-
those Taco Bells.
He was the dad. Yes, that's correct. The National Hockey League, the Kings, they beat the Oilers 6-5 to take a 1-0 lead in that series. The Stars, our Dallas Stars, they came back to beat the Avalanche in overtime 4-3. They've tied the series at 1. Casey,
Yeah, that one hurt. That one hurt.
did you stay up for that one? I believe that game ended somewhere around 2 a.m.
Yeah, it ended pretty late. Safe to say I was not up to watch the whole thing, but I do know that it went to overtime, and would have been really nice to win that one. Would have been really nice to win and be 2-0 and then have Dallas come to Colorado. But wasn't meant to be. We'll just finish it in Game 7 and rub it in all the Dallas Stars'
Game
faces.
7?
Game 7.
It's 1-1.
It's 1-1.
Yeah, I know,
right
but
now.
it's going to go to Game
5.
7. It's going to go to Game 7.
No, Casey.
The Jets, they beat the Blues 2-1 to go up 2 games. And you have the Capitals, they beat the Canadiens in overtime 3-2. Ovechkin scored his first career NHL overtime playoff goal.
Wow.
So how about that? Good
I
for
also
him.
have some breaking news.
Oh boy.
I'm in with Casey.
Why?
Plus 750 on the Avs. I've bet it.
Oh wow.
I'm in.
Oh, wow.
Let's win a championship, Casey.
Oh wow.
Let's win a championship.
Heading over to the association, the Clippers, they even up the series at 1 after beating the Nuggets yesterday, 105-102. Kawhi scored 39 points. Jokic's 26-point triple-double was not enough. The Pistons, they win their first playoff game since 2008.
That's insane.
That's a lot.
They
That's a
play
lot of years.
series.
Yeah, that's a lot of years.
And every team makes it.
Yeah, that's a lot of years. They even the series at 194 victory over the Knicks. Cunningham, he dropped 33 points, 12 boards. Brunson, 37 points in a losing effort. Casey, let's see how good your producing skills are, because right now I'm going to segue into some other NBA news, and that would be the Dallas Mavericks.
Yes.
In our group chat with Nico Harrison, the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. He had a press conference because apparently all this guy does is go to press conferences. I don't know why he gives a press conference every other day, but he certainly is always doing it.
Round of applause for this one, letting it be recorded and reported on.
Yes.
That's awesome, because we get clips like this one, which is just such a joy to watch, as obviously not a lifelong Mavericks fan, but I do call myself from now on a lifelong Mavericks hater.
Correct.
Or at least Nico Harrison hater. I guess I'll root for those fans' happiness when he moves on, but his press conference yesterday was a doozy.
It was tough. There was one reporter who asked him why you should still be employed. He gave a very sad answer to that. And then this one, where he says he was shocked about how much this fan base cared about their franchise player. Roll the clip.
Yeah, good question. I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know it to what level, but really the way we looked at it is, you know, if you're putting a team on the floor that's Kyrie, Clay, PJ, Anthony Davis, and Lively, we feel that's a championship caliber team, and we would have been winning at a high level, and that would have quieted some of the outrage. Yeah. Good.
They feel like AD makes that a championship caliber team. Luka, Kyrie, Derek Lively, and PJ played in the finals last year.
Correct.
They made it to the NBA finals. You think that was a championship caliber team? You think
Yeah,
a mid-20-year-old that, you know, is second all-time in playoff points per game, first all-time in 40-point games in the playoffs, you think that maybe could build a championship around him?
I certainly would think that would be capable of
Maybe.
being considered a championship-level roster when you get to the championship.
Yeah.
But I guess Nico had other plans. He had other plans. And there was some other tweets that were going around about him firing people that shouldn't be fired. Listen, whatever happened to the Dallas Mavericks this year, whatever happened there, know that as bad as you think it is here in Cincinnati, it's never going to be that bad. Whatever we possibly imagine, it's not going to be as bad as what they're going through right now, because I truly can't even fathom tearing down your entire franchise for no reason at all. No good reason, at least.
Without even trading him away, what would the reaction have been if Duke Tobin sat at the podium yesterday in the pre-draft press conference and was like, yeah, man, I really didn't know what Joe Burrow meant to this team and what it meant to this fan base. Even with him still on the team, I think most fans would be like, all right, get him out of here. He has no idea what's going on. with this team in this city. Nico, I mean, how clueless can Nico Harrison be? We all said instantly when that happened that it was a very bad trade for the Mavericks. That you have to shop him around. You have to get more for him. And every time Nico talks, somehow it gets worse.
Yeah.
He makes it worse.
I was just going to say, like, don't have to agree with him, but if he would have doubled down, and it sounds like the previous press conference where he doubled down that pissed everybody off, I could respect the doubling down more than what he said yesterday, because if you're going to double down, stick to, I mean, you made the decision. You might as well own it and just stick with it. But when you actually sit there and say, so that means this entire process, when you did decide to move on from Luka, at no point you thought that this would be the backlash that you would get. That's the disconnect he has with running any kind of franchise. It's the face of your franchise. Any team that has a face of their, I mean, that is just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane for him to say that.
There's no logic behind that trade outside of they wanted to burn that franchise to the ground. And everybody knows it. They shouldn't honestly, those owners shouldn't be able to keep their team. But that's the business of sports, baby. Some other breaking news per Sir Boy. Thank you, Sir Boy. And then I'll say, I guess, per Chris Wetterich. I believe I'm saying that right, hopefully. Just in Hamilton County and the Cincinnati Bengals have struck a preliminary deal on Paycor Stadium renovations. Statement from Commissioner Denise Driehaus, quote, "Never before has the NFL invested in our public asset, and never before have the Bengals invested so much." Driehaus said in a statement, quote, "This marks a fresh, forward-looking approach to negotiating a new lease."
Team-funded parts in Phase 1 include the East and West Club Lounge renovations, the renovation of suites at all stadium levels, concession improvements, and certain stadium beautification improvements. The county-funded aspects, at least as of now in Phase 1, include East and West Club vertical transportation improvements, electric power and code upgrades, elevator refurbishment, suite seats, suite glazing, jungle vision control room. So a lot of the nuts and bolts of the stadium will be handled by the county in this proposal. So seems like really, really good news. Has the date of June 30th as the goal for the final comprehensive agreement for the renovations and everything else that has to be done for the stadium, for the Bengals to stay here for the long term. So very, very important steps. Very glad we're making them.
I like that whole setup downtown Cincinnati, so I'm actually glad that they are working as hard as they are to keep it where it's located. You know, obviously, wherever, if they did build a brand new stadium elsewhere, it would be a badass stadium, and there's no doubt about it. But I do think there's a lot to be said about the location of where the current one is right now, especially in conjunction with where it is next to Great American Ballpark and the way that they've built that entire, line down there. So either way, I'm glad that they're working to keep that in Cincinnati. Either way, do you guys, if they were to build a dome, would you be happy with that? Would you?
No,
You're not a dome guy.
I'd have to quit work because I'd be down there protesting the entire time. I'd build an establishment in the concrete lot where they'd tear down the stadium to build the dome, and I'd camp there to stop it from happening. It'd be like, nah, I'm not gonna.
Would you be like that one guy and just sit on your roof until?
No, I would sit in the construction site. I'm not letting this happen.
Like,
I will not be an innocent bystander and let football in the outdoors go to die.
Well, I
sit on the top of Paycor's,
I can get on that.
So to be fair, I mean, the dome would bring in, it would be the pseudo Heritage Bank Center, whatever that place is called. So you'd be able to get, the concerts. You'd be able to get your Final Four. You'd be able to do whatever you want.
No.
You'd be able to get
Manias.
the WWE.
Yeah.
You'd be able to get whatever you want if you added the dome. The issue is if you like watching football, football is not played in a dome.
I would much rather the Bengals move out of downtown Cincinnati, staying in Cincinnati, but move to a suburb out of downtown Cincinnati than play in a dome in downtown. No question about that, at least in my opinion.
Well, the timing to battle the city could not be any better when you have the leverage that you do with the star players, because it's one thing when you have a bad team and you're trying to fight the city to get a new lease and everything like that, that becomes a little bit more difficult, but there's at least a lot of motivating factors to kind of increase the probability of it getting done, and it sounds like they're moving in the right direction. But this is Off the Bench, presented by UDF. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. I am assuming that was the completion of headlines. All right,
You
good
got
stuff.
it.
All right, Reds lose 6-3. Only put up 3 runs last night after putting up 24 runs, 3 touchdowns, and a field goal as they wrapped up the series over the weekend. So we'll talk about what we saw last night and just kind of overall. Right now, when you look at some of the players that are just absolutely playing phenomenal, which one, when you think of, when you look at Gavin Lux, all right, when you look at Austin Hayes and you look at Trevino and you look at some of these new additions that we thought were underwhelming additions in the offseason, all 3 of these guys are playing lights out right now, but which of these 3 players has staying power? Which one of these three players who are off to such a hot start right now, as we sit here past the midpoint of April, which of these three players are we the most confident can remain playing at this level? We'll discuss that as well as react to the opening series loss last night against the Marlins and talk about how important this stretch is moving forward. We'll be right back. More Off the Bench next. All right, we welcome you back off the bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliott Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. Reds lose game one against the Marlins last night, 6-3. Nick Lodolo was returned from paternity leave. He was off for just a short stint. A little off last night as well, kind of got rocked early. Looked a little off. I mean, like his inconsistencies early on this season haven't been horrible. He just didn't have his best stuff last night. Again, coming back after that break. But either way, we as we talked about to open up the show, we kind of figured when you put 24 runs up on the board, it really is interesting to see how the team is gonna pick up. Will they pick up where they left off? Obviously, putting up 24 runs, which is almost impossible to do, and they did it the way that they did on Sunday. I didn't have a lot of hopes that they were going to be able to put up another even average night offensively. Did put up 3 runs. Obviously Lux had a big hit late to kind of make it semi-interesting. But at no point did you feel like they were going to be able to muster up enough offensive runs to come back in that one. Obviously, you talked about the pitcher for the Marlins, who was lights out last night as well. 10-plus strikeouts? What was his final?
14 strikeouts.
14. Not bad. Just another night at the office.
Most since the Reds faced prime Max Scherzer. I think it was
Really?
somewhere in the mid-teens. Yeah, it was about 7 or 8 years ago. Most strikeouts for a pitcher against this Reds lineup. Yeah, very, very frustrating. But the thing about this game, I mean, we talked about Nick Lodolo certainly not having his best stuff. He still pitched 5 2/3 innings, 3 earned runs. We were in that game the whole time. We were down 3 all the way through, or 2 after the second inning, 3 after the fifth, and it felt like we were down 10.
Yeah.
But the Reds were within striking distance for the vast majority of that game until Alexis Diaz crumbled in the 7th. I think that is something that we can kind of hang our hat on, even when this isn't an 0-1 shutout. This is the team not playing well after a game where they had an offensive explosion, and they still were able to stay within striking distance. I know it's the Marlins. I know this is a team that we really, really wanted to beat this series, and statistically, we've now lost this series. But I think that one is very, very different than the last time this team went off, and we saw them right afterwards have a frustrating loss. This one's frustrating for different reasons. It felt like a game that the Reds had no business winning, that they could have snuck out there for a long time, and that's the kind of stuff this team needs. This team, has given away wins early in the season. They have to be able to sneak out some of these games that they don't deserve to win. Last night felt like it could have been one of those before Alexis Diaz really crumbled. I think, it's certainly baby steps, but that's less of a step back than we've seen from this team before after one of those offensive explosions.
Yeah, last night's game was a 162-game season game where sometimes it just doesn't go your way. The other pitcher was way better than what Nick Lodolo had. Shout out to Max Meyer, but I agree. I'm more with Jacob here that I saw a team that honestly fought more than they probably should have towards the end. I thought that game was over and dead, but the Reds fought a little bit. They put up 3 runs in the 8th inning to give them a little bit of hope in the 9th. I feel like the Reds, earlier on were unable to score any runs whatsoever, so to have them go down 6 and still keep fighting and keep grinding, that's what I took away from that one. I know there's no moral victories, but I did feel better, honestly, away from that game, or coming away from that game, because I thought that the offense played decent. 8 hits. They had 8 hits in that game. I know they were dominated by Max Meyer, but they were still able to claw their way to at least be competitive against the Marlins here, down 6 runs. And If we don't go to Alexis Diaz in the 7th, who knows where that game goes? Because Alexis Diaz, no disrespect, but I mean the guy can't pitch.
That's where we're at with Alexis Diaz at this point. Again, we talked about when he got called up.
He can't pitch. And I think Sirboy actually. Now I'll credit my good friend Sirboy because he tweeted this earlier, and I think I agree with it. If you're not going to close Alexis Diaz, and we had this debate on the show a few weeks ago, I think we were in the camp that maybe there was a role for Alexis Diaz. If Alexis Diaz isn't going to close games, Alexis Diaz should not be pitching for the Reds. There's no 7th inning, no 8th inning. I'm good. I'm good on Alexis Diaz. I know last night there was maybe a bleeding issue. There was a blister or whatever was going on with his hand.
Cut it on a slider.
I understand that, but at the end of the day, I don't trust Alexis Diaz in a non-closer role. He allows far too many base runners to be trusted. What did he give up? 1 walk and 3 hits, 4 base runners in an inning and a third of work, 3 earned runs. I just don't see a world where I want Alexis Diaz pitching. You have better options. You have options that have pitched significantly better than him this season. Last night, in my eyes, was a litmus test as to where that's going in the future, and where that's going is probably back down to AAA. I don't think that Alexis Diaz is going to have a spot here long term this season for the Reds.
Yeah, and if that's the case, I think that's an absolute nightmare scenario for the Cincinnati Reds. If you don't have Alexis Diaz as one of the best relievers in your bullpen, this bullpen is not one that I have faith in being towards the top of the league for the entirety of the year. You have to have guys that have that top end stuff, and when Alexis Diaz is on, he has one of the best stuff we have in the entire bullpen. And if he's not going to be the Alexis Diaz of old, I don't trust Emilio Pagan and Tony Santillan to be nails in the back end of that bullpen for 162 games. I just don't. You need a guy like Alexis Diaz, if he is the Alexis Diaz of old, that can be that role, and the Reds don't have that right now. But I mean, last night certainly wasn't pretty. Didn't allow a run in the 3 appearances before that. The 2 most recently, 15 pitches in a full inning of work, just 1 hit through those 2 appearances, 1 walk through those 2 appearances. So I certainly think that there is more than enough in Alexis Diaz to have a role in this bullpen. I understand people get frustrated with the walks and his inability to hold people on base, and sure, that is frustrating. He also has, probably the best swing and miss stuff, even when he's not on, of anyone in that bullpen. So I have faith in letting him try it, and if it doesn't work, I think the Reds are in just as bad of a situation as if you send him down. So I think if you're in the Reds boat, you have to make Alexis Diaz work, or at least hope that he can figure it out. And one bad outing is not going to make me, pull the trigger on getting rid of him.
I hope he's good. I hope he's good enough. I would love to trade him by the deadline. I'm late to this party. I think everybody else wanted him traded last year when he was pitching okay. I was wrong. Hand up, I was wrong. They should have traded him. I think he overperformed what his expectations were, and now we're seeing him come back to earth. I think there's too many instances where he gives up way too many bases to be a closer in baseball. It was just way too many, and maybe it's because they're still trying to navigate him gaining confidence, gaining that health back, getting his strength back, and getting all this, and that's why he's coming in the 7th instead of the 9th. Maybe that's why. Maybe Terry Francona doesn't trust him. I don't fully understand what's going on. But I will say this: Alexis Diaz in the 7th doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If you're gonna have Alexis Diaz up, close him, because that's what he's been good at. Despite my frustrations with him, Jacob is right. I mean, he doesn't blow saves a whole lot. Despite how ugly those saves look, he does get the job done for the most part. Coming in the 7th inning, I feel like that's honestly where most of his issues have been coming up. In at least for the Reds over the past.
You can't give him runners.
Correct.
At all. Because he won't hold them on.
I just think the last several years he's been brought in the 8th. He's been brought in earlier than the 9th, and it hasn't gone well. And it's still not going well right now. And my concern is if you continue to throw him in the 6th and the 7th and the 8th before that 9th inning, is he going to be able to be at least somewhat competitive? And as of right now, he's not.
I would close him.
I'd
throw him out there, run the lights, run the song, see what happens. If he blows saves, he blows saves. But if anyone talks about Alexis Diaz last year being bad, he had one of the best blown save percentages in baseball. So, I mean, you can hold your breath as much as you want, but it'll probably just raise your lung capacity because the Reds are winning games. I think he's the best closing option we have when he's on. Again, that's obviously a huge qualifier, but I would just throw him out there and try. Maybe the adrenaline of closing in the 9th is enough to get him back, to where we thought he was, or at least close. So I think even if he's close to that, he's the best option we have to be in that role. So I would throw it out there and try, because if it doesn't work in the 9th in a couple of outings, what's changed? I mean, maybe you lose one extra game. It's a 162-game season. I'd rather see if Alexis Diaz can close or not.
I think, I mean, again, when you look at the end result, obviously, we saw the close percentage last year. But I think every time, as you mentioned, we're holding our breath the entire time. You also talk about you can't put him in, you can't give him runners. The problem is, even if you bring him in without runners, traditionally, he likes to walk the first batter, it seems, more times than not.
But if they don't score.
But, yeah. But that's been the thing. Look, that's the negative side, that obviously his decline has continued in that regards. But I think the positive is the fact that you do have options. I know Santillan and obviously Pagan and guys like that we look at, we don't really look at them as true closers, but at the same time they have options and they have a little depth in this bullpen without a clear defined role as far as the closer is concerned. How do we feel about what is remaining? Let's say we take Alexis Diaz out of it. It's worked thus far. You're just not confident, Jacob. It sounds like that this can be sustained over a 162-game season.
I feel much better about those guys in, 8 and 7. If you have the closer that we thought we had in Alexis Diaz, and you have Emilio Pagan going in the 8th and Tony Santillan going in the 7th, we're talking about one of the best back end of the bullpens maybe in all of baseball. Yeah. I just don't have, a ton of faith in a guy in Emilio Pagan that, how many games has he saved in his entire career before he got here? He had 1 year in Tampa in 2019 where he saved 20 games. Outside of that, he has 17 saves on his entire career, and we're going to, try to push for a playoff spot with him as the closer. I'm just not necessarily buying that. If we're going to rotate everyone and Santillan, he's still very raw at a position like that. So we'll see, and maybe these guys can, prove me wrong and stay closer to where they're at now. MSM puts in the chat right now, Ashcraft has closer stuff. That's something I would love to explore. If we don't have, a locked-in closer right now, I think Ashcraft throwing up 97, 98-mile-an-hour cutter, I think that absolutely could play in the 9th. But then with Nick Martinez in the rotation, you're giving up your best long relief option. So that's probably not a move you can make until you get, a Rhett Lauder or someone else healthy and ready to go to pitch in the Major League rotation so Nick Martinez can take that multiple inning spot in the bullpen. I don't know what the answer is there, but I think the best answer for the Reds is, to have these guys in the roles that we kind of predicted them to be in. It's the same thing we talked about with the lineup, We have guys that have to play in different positions because whether guys are underperforming or they're injured, when people aren't playing where they're supposed to play, you just lose confidence, or at least I do, in what the team's going to be able to output as a whole throughout an entire season. And no one thought Emilio Pagan and Tony Santillan were going to be the closers for the whole season going into this year. So that just scares me.
I don't know what the plan was heading into the year because clearly he being Terry Francona, was going to rotate through a bunch of guys in that role. And he was, I think, and it's still what you're seeing now, he's going to ride the hot hand. Pagan's been good for the most part outside of the blown save against the Mariners. So outside of that, he's looked like our closer. Now, he started the season, he being again Terry Francona, with Ian Jabot closing a game. Maybe that was his set answer. Well, he saw that didn't work, so he changed his mind. It's going to take probably 1 or 2 more blown saves from Pagan to change his mind again and switch over to Tony Santillan. If that doesn't work, he's going to keep rotating. I don't think the Reds have a set closer. Well, they have one. He's just not going to close games in Alexis Diaz. I don't know if Terry Francona is liking what he's seeing there yet, and maybe he could prove us all wrong, Alexis Diaz. But I don't know. I don't know what that answer is yet because he hasn't looked good this year. His fastball is down. When Jacob and I were at that game, he was throwing 88-mile-per-hour fastballs. Just not going to work.
The 2 appearances after his return from injury, he had some of the best stuff numbers on his fastball and slider he's ever had in his career.
I think it's still not what it was, and I could be wrong, obviously. So hopefully it continues. Then I'm all aboard if it were to continue. But I'm just out on him being a 7th inning guy. I think if you have Alexis Diaz, you close him. If not, then there's no reason for him to be here.
I know it's not baseball. It doesn't affect win-loss, but just how awkward that song is in the 7th with like a guy standing on second base. Yeah. You can't do that. You need the lights if you're going to do the whole trumpet song and dance. So, I'm out on the 7th inning stuff too.
All right, off the bench. We'll step away for a few. We'll continue. Talking Reds when we come back. They have 16 straight games against teams that are under 500. And right now they're kind of in the mix. Win one, lose one, win one, lose one. How many more, from a win-loss standpoint, how many more games, how many wins do they need to come out of over the next 16 to say that they truly took advantage of this stretch of weak opponents? We'll talk about that when we come back. More off the bench when we return. 16 straight games against an opponent under 500. That's what's coming up for your Cincinnati Reds. It was 17 yesterday. I know you guys had, touched on this on yesterday's show. 16 games right now against teams under 500, and this is a very significant stretch, an important stretch, because I think we're still trying to figure out who this team is. I mentioned earlier when we opened the show, baseball is such a long season that you try not to overreact to wins. You don't want to overreact to losses, but I do feel like more than ever, I feel like this fan base, us included, we have overreacted to every win and overreacted more so. I think we've more so overreacted to every loss than we have overreacted to wins. But when we do see this team win, I think we get a little bit more excited because when they win, we usually see the proper buttons being pushed. We see the recipe to the success that we know that they're capable of having. It obviously includes their starter going deep into the ball game, which they're more than capable of with this rotation, one of the better rotations in baseball. And obviously, it usually is compounded with the fact that they're getting run production, and they definitely have been doing that over the last week and a half. Last night still putting 3 runs up, but it looked painful. It was a struggle after putting 24 runs up the game before. But with 16 straight games against an opponent under 500 moving forward, obviously you'd like to say, hey, you want a 500 record against those teams under 500. But I also think we could look at this stretch, down the road and say there was a missed opportunity. If this team misses the playoffs by 5 or less games, I do believe we could look at this stretch. We may act like, this stretch, and as we sit here in April heading into May, it's no big deal. It's so early in the season. But, we've seen this team miss the playoffs by a few games a couple of times over the last few years. I think that this is one of the most important stretches of the season because you have to capitalize and take advantage of opportunities. This team is overall healthy right now. I know they don't have Tyler Stevenson, but I don't think we can complain about that when you're getting so much production from your catcher position right now. So I think right now this is as healthy as this group has been all season. It may be the healthiest they'll be for the remainder of the season. Knock on wood. Hopefully no more injuries happen. But this is the core of this team right now. I don't think you could just settle for 8-8. I don't think you could just settle for a 9-7 mark. I think you at least need to be 5 games over 500 against these 16 teams moving forward, or 16 games moving forward. I think that this is probably the most important stretch of the season because I think if they miss the playoffs by a few games, I think we're going to circle this stretch right here and say, hey, any game that they fumble the season, I would look back at this stretch right here being the most crucial one.
The Reds failed at every opportunity they were given last year
no doubt.
To win these type of games. You cannot lose the series to the Marlins. You cannot lose a series to the 3-win Colorado Rockies. You can't do it.
It's tough to play there.
Despite Kyle Farmer hitting 300 in Colorado this season, despite Nick Martini hitting 295 in Colorado this year. It's a really, really bad baseball team. Almost historically bad. And there's just no excuse for it. You can sit here and say it's early, they're figuring it out, a lot of baseball left. If you walk away from this stretch and you don't come out with a winning record, there is a 0% chance of making the playoffs, of being competitive long term, because the schedule gets a lot harder. The schedule's going to get a lot tougher than it is right now. You have to take advantage of these next 3 weeks of baseball. You have to. Otherwise, there's no point of playing the rest of the year. There really isn't, because it doesn't get easier than this. We said the number was, 10-7 yesterday?
That was the floor we put.
Yeah, if they lose this series, then I'm going to be in a world of pain because, honestly, they could have some surprises, sure. Could they beat the Braves? I guess, maybe, theoretically, hypothetically.
4-game Cardinals sweep would probably get you back in.
But it's like you're asking them. It goes back to what happened last year, and it goes back to what happened in 2023. It's like we're just asking you to do stuff that we know is not going to happen. And even if we thought it was possible for you to 4-game sweep the Cardinals, I think that they're still capable of getting 4 games swept by Atlanta. Immediately after, they're capable of giving and taking the same amount. We were talking about highs and lows yesterday, and Jacob brought up the point that the highs have been just as high, the lows have been low. It's like they are so, and this is kind of Casey's point before the show. It's like they're the most consistently inconsistent team in the history of baseball. That's what they do. So they have to come out of this stretch with a winning record. They have to look good. They have to play good baseball. They can't be scoring 1 run or 0 runs in any games coming up. You have to take advantage of it.
Yeah, looking just backwards a little bit, sitting at 2-2 so far on this road trip. Alex Wallace put it in the chat right when we started this segment, and I think I'm right there with him. Just to move the goalpost a little bit, I think you got to get out of this road trip with the record of winning these series, right? I think you got to end this 9-game road trip at 6-3.
Yeah,
at least. And if you do drop this Marlins series, you have to turn around and sweep the Rockies. And you never want to have to, ask for sweeps for teams, especially in the major leagues. These guys are all professionals, but you have to leave this road trip with the, representation of winning these series. And you have to get those wins because you should beat those teams. And I can't think of a better situation to buck that trend than losing game 1 to the Marlins. Because you should be able to win all 3. So go out and win game 2 and game 3. But St. Louis, when you return home, I know they're under 500, but that's a team that always seems to find a way to play sound baseball. So the Reds aren't going to be able to, coast. They can't beat themselves in that series. Atlanta, certainly a team that started off struggling, but they're 9-13 now.
Yeah.
And for a team that started off with 2 wins, that is playing some pretty good baseball, and you have to go down to Atlanta after playing the Cardinals and the Nationals. This stretch is easy, but I don't want to, hope the guys in the locker room don't take too much of a deep breath because you certainly still have to play, good baseball, and we can't act like the Reds are too far ahead of all these teams. I know they're playing pretty well right now, sitting at 11-12, but I think there's a lot of teams in Major League Baseball whose fans probably do what we're doing right now. And when the Red Series is coming up, they're having a very similar conversation.
Yeah, I'm against the idea that if you lose this one, go sweep them the net. Like, win the series.
I would like to.
The Marlins aren't good. They're very, very bad, and so are the Colorado Rockies. We can sit here and say, you lost to the Marlins and the Rockies, but then you 4-game swept the Cardinals, and then you win this. Like, if you just stack up series wins, that's all we're asking for. I know it's a very easy thing to sit up here and say as somebody who doesn't play on the Reds, just ask them to go win every series they play. But we're not playing good teams here. I mean, I can only say so many times how bad the Marlins are. The Marlins, they're 10-12 this year, sure. Do the Braves have less wins? I guess technically. The Marlins are atrocious. They're atrocious. The Colorado Rockies might break the record that the White Sox set last season, playing in the National League West against maybe 4 playoff teams. They're 4-17 this year.
Ooh, picked up a win yesterday.
They're 4-17 this year. Like, these aren't series that you're like, we can lose this one. Like, no. You got to win.
Off the bench, presented by UDF, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. And I'm glad you brought that point up, too, about the fact that, we're talking about, the Reds have 16 games against opponents under 500, and acting as if, the Reds are superior to those teams, as if they're looking down on those teams. But the Reds are one of those teams. Right now, as we sit here, they are a team that's also under 500. So, how realistic is it to expect a team that's been playing sub-500 baseball to go and just rout teams who are honestly playing at the same level, to be honest? All these teams have enough of a strength to put them in position to win these games, but their deficiencies catch up with them, and we've seen the deficiencies of the Reds catch up with them multiple times, and obviously mainly in these losses that they have had, no doubt. Now, one thing we talked about a while back, too, was the fact that we thought that the Reds' offseason was very underwhelming. Outside of the splash that they made, technically not even in the offseason, while last season was still happening, hiring Terry Francona in October. After that, it was just very kind of underwhelming. Now, they kind of teased us a bit because they made a big move right off the bat, moving on from Jonathan India and going to get Brady Singer. And we're like, okay, you're making some moves. Then it got quiet afterwards. And then you get Trevino, and then obviously you go get Austin Hayes was one of the final additions that they made. They get the Gavin Lux deal done. You obviously add Rogers to the bullpen. The ironic part is say what you want about Nick Krall, and it's only past the midpoint of April, but every single one of those damn moves, if every one of those moves right now has the Reds in position to be a 500 baseball team at this point. We keep saying, man, how good is this team going to be with Gavin Lux and Jose Trevino? You look up and down this right now, and it's just like, well, how, Austin Hayes, that's not the outfielder, that's not the power bat in the outfield that we were told we were going to get. Imagine how bad this team would be without the guys that they just went and got that had us all feeling like we didn't have confidence in this team to begin with. Obviously, all these guys are playing above what's on the back of their baseball card at this point, and you look at, obviously, Gavin Lux, who had a very slow start to the season, but he's definitely turned it around. I mean, obviously, the fact that he's hitting over 300 at this point, obviously, he's scored 10 runs on the season, 23 hits, multiple extra base hits, 11 RBIs on the season, and then you look at Jose Trevino, who I think is one thing we talked about last week, probably the most underrated Red at this point, but I think now he's starting to get the proper flowers he deserves. I know he was 0 for 4 last night, and then, Wins, obviously, has been a great, backup catcher to the backup catcher, if that's what you want to call it at this point. But Austin Hayes, my goodness. I mean, you talk a guy with the smallest sample size of games that we've seen from these new additions, but I don't think anybody has maximized their short sample size of games more than what we've seen from Austin Hayes early on. I mean, the kid's been unbelievable. He's healthy. We knew he was an all-star a few years ago, and then last year had the kidney infection that just kind of threw him out of whack. We were underwhelmed with the addition, but I'm overwhelmed right now with the production. Only 7 games from him thus far. But imagine where this team would be without those underwhelming additions that they added in the offseason.
Yeah, Hayes has played 7 games. He's second on the team in WAR.
Yeah.
He's .6 WAR in 7 games. What's that pace out to?
Yeah.
Mike Trout?
Yeah.
It's been unbelievable so far. He's hitting 406 with a 441 OBP and a 719 slug. That's unbelievable. His Baseball Savant page looks like an MVP. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. We have a clip that, if he stays on this pace, I'll retweet it 15 more times this year, that Austin Hayes can't possibly save this Reds team. Well, that's what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
He went in the phone booth, put on the cape, and he's Superman. He's saving this outfield. He's saving this lineup, and he looks every bit of the part that we were sold by some of the people that were a lot more optimistic than we were. That he does have, this upside to be the player that we needed in the outfield to really turn that position group along. And, him playing at this level, I know he's not, going to hit 400 all year long, but he's playing elite baseball, and I think he's playing it to a point where it seems more or less sustainable. I don't know if he's going to, hit this many home runs and extra base hits per at-bat, but he's professional, and he's playing good defense and taking good at-bats. It seems like something that could last, and that is very, very exciting for a guy that you got for $5 million this offseason.
Yeah, Austin Hayes, I was very excited about that move because for $5 million, it's borderline a steal. And we all said that. It's just, can that guy be the guy that saves the team? And I think we all in here said no, but certainly he's proven us wrong day by day, game by game. And what Justin was alluding to there is I think why the story for the Reds is so confusing, because you have this core group of young guys who haven't really had either the chance to be good together, or they haven't been able to do it when they've been on the field in general. Like CES, I love CES, but he has been that guy. You go down the lineup, Spencer Steer this year. The fact that he still plays baseball right now is mind-boggling. He's hitting 120. He's nowhere competitive at all to being a professional athlete. Tyler Stevenson is not on the team right now. You have Elly De La Cruz, sure. Matt McClain, injured early on this season. Does he look fine now? Yeah. When he plays, he's great. Can Noelvi Marte change the way I look at this young core offensively? Absolutely he can. I thought Noelvi Marte was going to be great last year. But the core has to play together, and they have to play the way that Nick Kroll intended them to play, and they have to be healthy and they have to be good. That's the bottom line. They're never going to, the Reds being them, they're never going to go out and spend $28 million, $30 million on a free agent. It sucks. I don't think it's right, but that's the way it is. You have to have that young core step up, play together, be healthy, and be competitive. It hasn't happened that way yet. In fact, the only time it happened was for that month stretch during 2023 when all this started. So that's what the Reds have to build on, and how many years are we gonna wait? How many years? Because you got 3 years with Terry Francona, 4 with an option. 3 years with Terry Francona to get this done. You got 3 years with Elly De La Cruz before something happens, whether or not that's a trade or whatever. There is a clock. I'm not saying it's immediate. I'm not saying it's a pressure right off the rip right now. But I do think coming up soon, these guys have to live up to their expectations. They have to, or there's no shot that the lineup's ever going to figure themselves out. But to be fair, we talk about the Reds and the Marlins. Or should they be in the same sentence, right? Should the Reds and the Marlins and the Rockies and the Pirates all be down at the bottom, all in the same group. The difference is I think the Reds are significantly better talent-wise. If they live up to their expectation, then it's not even remotely close. The Reds are a mile ahead of the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, the Reds added pieces in the offseason. We just didn't like who they added. Those other teams aren't even trying in the offseason, and we think we have it the worst of all the teams in baseball. And it's like, oh, it could be worse. But you're right. A lot of people lump the Reds into the category with those teams, and I think it's because, well, they probably should be getting more production from this team. Maybe not just this season, but big picture. But yeah, I'm with you. A lot of people put them in that category. I think talent-wise, they're significantly better than those teams.
Well, that's why it's frustrating when they don't significantly get past the Marlins and the Rockies by 15 games every year, because they are 15 games better than the Miami Marlins. They're 15 games better than the Colorado Rockies and the Chicago White Sox. They're not in the same stratosphere as the Pittsburgh Pirates, who continue to bury their organization. The Reds are different than that. I'm not saying they're much better, and I'm not saying they deserve a lot of credit. They have not had a lot of success over the last 30 years. But they are different, and they have higher expectations, and they should.
All right, we're going to step away for a few moments. We'll wrap up Reds talk when we come back, and then we'll close it out with some draft with draft talk. Again, we're a couple days away from the NFL draft, so we'll get to that coming up here shortly. But when we come back, so we just talked obviously about the production of those offseason additions. When you obviously talk about Austin Hayes, who's only played in 7 games. Obviously, when you want to talk about the fact that Gavin Lux, who we weren't really sure what to expect, with him. You look at the backup catcher, now the starting catcher for the Reds until we figure out what's going on with Tyler Stevenson. Jose Trevino's been great. When you look at the production that you're getting from those 3 players right now, all of them playing above what we expected, and I think anybody expected, but which one of those is most likely to continue on this pace for the rest of the season? We'll discuss more when we come back. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by UDF. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing. We are off and rolling. Did I say Jacob Tissett? Did I say everyone's name? It doesn't matter, by the way.
I thought I missed it too, but I didn't want to say. I don't know.
I saw. So here's someone in the
ADD
chat.
is bad today. It's bad.
Here's someone in the chat. Here's my personal opinion. That's the name of the person.
That's a great name.
Yes,
Because it just lets you know every chat they have, it's their personal opinion.
So this person said, it's April, and this whole podcast has their hair on fire. It's April, and only 2.5 games behind in the standings. It's not just the Reds. The whole league is not playing well. True, yeah, the batting average numbers, every offensive statistic is down. Here's the difference. When the Reds have the stretch against horrible teams, you have to win them. The Reds don't get the benefit of the doubt of being like, yeah, in September, that's when we shine. And we're gonna, and the Cincinnati Reds are gonna go on some miracle run late in the year. They're not the Phillies. They're not the Mets. They're not the Padres. They're not the Yankees. They're not any of these teams that are pretty much already in the playoffs. Like, you can say whatever you want about this season and maybe who's slumping where, and maybe they go on a 15-game stretch where they're, they only win 5 out of those 15. They're gonna make the playoffs because that's just how good that roster is. You cannot say the same for the Cincinnati Reds. You cannot. You can try to say it, and you can dream about it, but you can't confidently say that, oh, yeah, the Reds are going to be fine. Don't worry about any kind of slump. Don't worry about them not playing well. If they lose to the Marlins and the Rockies and the Braves and the Cardinals and the Pirates, if they lose all those games, don't worry about it. They'll figure it out. No. They don't have the benefit of the doubt that these other teams do. They have to take advantage now. And yeah, when they struggle, it's different than when the Mets struggle. It's different than when the Padres struggle. It's a different type of struggle because the Reds have not been able to make the playoffs in quite some time. If you want to count COVID, you can go ahead and count COVID. I don't count it. So that means we haven't made the playoffs since 2013. 2013. That's what we're looking at right now for the Cincinnati Reds. So there is urgency. There is more pressure on the Reds than there is on the Yankees right now. 100% there is. Because there's no urgency from the other teams. They can do whatever they want and make the playoffs because that's how their roster's built. They're great. The Reds have to play well right now. They have to.
And I've never understood that thinking of, and this is how it always works. When players play poorly early in the season, oh man, we jump into that, as you should. Like I'm a believer in, if you're playing poor, no matter what point of the season, you give your analysis on that. If they're playing well, you give your analysis on that. I don't know why people do it so early in the season. Then let's stop the show. We'll all go home, and then we'll just come back in September or October and just give our analysis. Like, we're giving our analysis based on what's happening now. It was like the Elly takes I had. That was, Elly's going to be fine. Oh, no, I get that. I'm not doubting that he's going to be fine. But for right now, I was giving my analysis on how he wasn't playing well then. Same thing when players are playing well. We're giving our analysis of how they're playing well now. So, that is what it is, which is why we set it up this way. Of the three players who are all playing above what we expected and above what's on the back of their baseball card, we're acknowledging the fact that they're playing better than they probably should be, if you will. Maybe not the team, but the individual players. Of course, talking about some of the newcomers, when you're talking, of course, about Austin Hayes and Jose Trevino and Gavin Lux, and you look at how dominant those three have been past the midway point of April here. I'm curious, of those three guys right there who have all played phenomenal at this point, of those three, who are you most confident that this is who they are? Who are you most confident that they can actually sustain this and be this contributor moving forward? And now, do I expect a guy like, to be hitting over 400 and to be hitting 380 and 390? No. But as far as the consistent approach at the plate, the consistent activity and production, I think that all three of these guys right now, there were doubts when they got them in the offseason, and there's a reason we're all surprised when you look at their numbers as we sit here on April 22nd, technically, on April 22nd. It's April 22nd. You look at the number of those guys, Elliot. Which of those three individuals are you most confident that you think that they can continue on at this level? Or Jacob, if you're ready, you jump in too. But yeah,
I'm going to say Gavin Lux because of what we've seen from him before, and it's the second half last year. It's the prospect pedigree, and I think it's the opportunity that he's going to have to play more often. I think that Austin Hayes is going to be confined to a very platoon role on this team. Obviously, maybe not if he keeps hitting 400, but that was obviously the plan when they brought him in, was to be more of a true platoon outfielder. We'll see if he gets to that point, but if that is the case, I think Lux will probably get the most at-bats out of everyone else. I know Trevino's been phenomenal so far this year, wins as well, the other catcher, but still the perfect system for this Reds is Tyler Stevenson behind the plate. And when he gets healthy, he will resume that role, maybe not as often as he might like, depending on how great these other guys continue to play. But my confidence level is in Gavin Lux because I think he's playing the role right now that he's going to be playing all year long. And I think that level of consistency is going to really help him be one of the more solid bats throughout the entirety of this year. And just looking at the rankings right now, Lux first in batting average among those that qualify. Austin Hayes, Austin Wins right up there as well. And then Jose Trevino right below Gavin Lux. I think if you're looking at the team rankings right now, Gavin Lux is closest to where he's going to be at the end of the season than anyone else.
Yeah, I hesitated. I'm going to say Austin Hayes, but I don't want to expect too much out of these guys. I think Jose Trevino has surpassed my wildest expectations of what he could be through 20-something games this season. And if Tyler Stevenson does continue to miss time, I think Jose Trevino is going to be that guy. I think he's established himself as the leader of our pitching staff, and he's going to guide them. Credit to the pitchers; they have to pitch well as well. They get a majority of the credit, but Jose Trevino certainly gets credit for having our pitching staff be where it is right now. And I think if you had to look at his numbers, of course you can say that he's never been a 300 hitter to end the season. He's never been this or that. But Jose Trevino has been consistent. If anything else, he's been consistent. And that's what I'm banking on right now. I'm banking on consistency. And I think he's going to be that guy going forward. Austin Hayes, can he be that? Sure. Gavin Lux? Sure. 100%. All three of them can be great players for the Reds this year. I'm just going to say Jose Trevino right now is going to be the leader going forward. He's going to be that veteran. He's going to be somebody that everybody looks up to. And I think that rides throughout the whole season, despite if Tyler Stevenson comes back. And if he doesn't, I think he'll have more opportunity to shine.
Jose Trevino, again, 14 hits and 48 bats. And I had someone bring up on the show yesterday the fact that, they're surprised that, he hasn't, hit in more runs. He only has 5 RBIs, but he lives at the bottom of the lineup. There's not a lot of guys on base more times than not whenever, he steps up to the plate. with as great as he's been to this point, if it does continue, you would have to think at some point you got to start moving him up in that lineup in that order a little bit, right? Like we have talked about the fact that Stevenson has he started his rehab starts yet or his games yet? I thought it was supposed to
The
be
Reds
this week.
posted some pictures of him in catching gear behind the plate. I think that is the update we have gotten on his injury.
Getting closer.
We'll
But
see.
these are good problems to have because I am curious how they're going to utilize these guys when they come back. Wins, obviously, I'm not really as worried about him. He's been a great story. Don't get me wrong. He's done exactly what he's supposed to as the current backup, but he's technically the third catcher on this depth chart, whatever it comes down
I think
to.
Austin Wins is hoping for a speedy recovery for Tyler Stevenson to be sent down. If he can keep this, 400 average on the Major League stat sheet, it's like a backup quarterback who gets a start in the NFL and looks really good. You need that starter back pretty soon. Because you're not a 450 hitter, and this can probably make him some good money next year as a backup catcher.
100% he can.
And
by the way,
hold
Jose,
on to those numbers.
Yeah,
yes.
right.
I think Jose Trevino ranks what 1, 2. He ranks third on the team in runs scored. So it might not be bringing home runs, but he's responsible for a lot of the runs.
Because
as well.
he's sitting there by himself, and you get to the top of the order. So it's like, but overall too. But yeah, this lineup looks a lot different when you're getting contributions from Gavin Lux, Trevino, Hayes, and it's nice to have him healthy and back. Obviously, when Matt McClain's out there, and Elly, who's turned it around. Obviously, Friedel's hitting 294 there at the top. His team's not perfect. Candelario, though, my goodness. Like,
Well, I mean, Candelario is atrocious.
You think we crowdfund? Is that the solution now?
Yeah, maybe.
I can't watch him anymore.
Well, and I think the Reds are slowly starting to make a statement that guy's just not going to play that much. I mean, if you're going to be this bad, you have 9 hits and 70 at-bats. 9 hits and 70 at-bats. And this is no free pass for Spencer Steer either, who also shouldn't be on the team, with 8 hits and 64 at-bats.
Can we blame Steer, though?
Hitting $125. No, and that's the
They're
thing.
forcing him out there.
No, Spencer Steer gets a free pass because he's injured.
Yeah.
There's no free pass for Jeimer Candelario. I mean, if you're trying to win baseball games, he can't be in the field and he can't be in the lineup. So what does he do? He sits the bench.
He can't hit and he can't field.
He's terrible.
And he obviously has no self-awareness either, because if I was playing this bad, I would have faked an injury months ago.
Yeah.
I mean, how are you not on IL trying to figure this out? I don't know what the answer is, but the answer certainly isn't giving him at-bats. And it's definitely not playing him at third base without Noelvi Martes looked over the last few games. So I don't know what the solution is. It's a sunk cost. You gain nothing back on that contract by playing Jeimer Candelario and having him hit 200. You gain nothing.
In fact, it takes it away. Like, the only thing
Right.
you're going to get is negativity.
The fan base will start to forget about Jeimer Candelario quicker if he's riding pine than if he's out there striking out and getting errors. So bite the bullet. It's the same conversation on a bigger scale than the conversation we had with Nick Martinez. You're paying him $21 million wherever you pitch him. So if it's not working as a starter, put him in the role you know he's good at.
Yep.
The role we know Jeimer Candelario is good at is filling water cups. So that's what I would like him to do.
I agree.
yeah, speaking of Nick Martinez, he's on the mound tonight. So hopefully
Big test for Martinez tonight.
I hope he doesn't continue adding to the ever-growing narrative of the doubt that's starting to settle in when it comes to what his role is within this rotation. So, yeah, I think tonight, I don't really want to get into the Nick Martinez stuff now, but you're right. I'm gonna let tonight's results speak for itself, and that'll determine how we kind of look at him. At least
How many
for
more
tomorrow.
starts are allowed to speak for themselves for him?
Because
I think we said that last time when we had this debate, and possibly the time before.
he's got through this 17-game stretch. That's what he's got. 16-game stretch now with these bad teams. If he's still not a competitive pitcher through 5 innings, you have to move him out of that spot. I mean, he's taking up space right now. If Carson Spires has to get healthy and occupy the 5th starter role, he'll do so.
Have we had an update on Rhett Lauder?
I don't know if I haven't seen one on Rhett Lauder. Maybe Kirby has one, but I have not seen one on Rhett Lauder lately. I thought he was going to start doing a rehab assignment at least soon, or start pitching, but I know nothing.
We did have Chase Burns called up to Double-A just a couple days ago. That's a similar trajectory to Rhett Lauder as last year, I should say. And obviously, we did see Lauder at the end of last year, so possibly we could get Chase Burns, maybe not in the rotation, possibly in the bullpen, but somewhere in a Reds uniform this year. What do you think? That's any kind of likelihood there?
Maybe, and I don't think so yet. I mean, we'll start talking about this down the line.
I'm just thinking who is the logical replacement for Nick Martinez, because I'm not pulling Graham Ashcraft from the bullpen
neither
with
am
how
I.
good he's been.
Neither
That's
am
not
I.
even close to something I'm considering. Alex Wallace does update us. Louder is throwing bullpens, so maybe closer to that return, and that's what you're waiting on with Nick Martinez?
Yeah.
I know Chase Petty, another high-profile prospect. Maybe we talk about potentially moving him up to the rotation, depending on how he does in AAA to start this year. I don't know. I just have a very, very hard time believing that Nick Martinez is the best answer for too much longer.
He's 0-3. Not that win-loss record matters, but it is like they lose every time he pitches. So he has a 6 ERA. He's given up 23 hits in 21 innings, 14 earned runs. He hasn't looked good. So I'm hoping that you're not pitching him to start right now. You're not starting him because of that $21 million. I'm hoping you're doing it for better reasons, because clearly he's just not that guy that you want him to be. He can be a great reliever. He can be worth the $21 million, just not in the current role. I don't know who the next man up honestly would be. If it's not Carson Spires, I have a hard time believing it's anybody else than Brett Louder.
Would you do, I guess what I was kind of getting at there is, would you put Spires in the rotation over Nick Martinez, or would you just wait for Louder if that timeline is about a month?
I'd put Spires in.
You would, okay.
Yeah, because I think Spires can at least go longer than Martinez can.
I agree. I just don't know if you try to give Martinez as much leash as possible to figure it out.
But I also think it's how much are you going to kill his confidence when
very fair.
Every single game is a loss, and every single game is the same stat line. He goes 5 innings, 4 earned runs. So we'll see. We'll see. I just think that if he's in there to be the innings eater right now, I think Carson Spires can give me more innings to eat.
Yeah, very fair. Obviously, the last start a little bit different, same stat line, but a little bit different in terms of the runs coming in the first and second inning, a run in both, as opposed to later in the start like normal. I think something tonight that I'll certainly have my eye on is what's that leash look like?
Yeah.
Nick Martinez feels like a pitcher, and I know that's the case with everybody, but him specifically, that you have to get out in front of. Pulling him after, 4 innings of shutout baseball when he looks really good might be the correct decision, because that next 2/3 is when he gives up, 3-4 runs. So
yeah.
I'm going to be very interested to see if he is able to get through those first 3, maybe first 4 innings. Do the Reds, regardless of how he looks, potentially have a little bit of a quicker trigger to try to keep one of those cleaner stat lines regardless of length? Use a Graham Ashcraft, use one of those multiple inning guys out of the bullpen to, buffer that to get to where you normally have, your bullpen coming in. I just have a hard time believing that the Reds are going to win a lot of games trying to have Nick Martinez go 5 and 6 innings.
Yep, and again, we'll have a full reaction to whatever his outing is tonight in Game 2 against the Marlins. All right, that wraps up our Reds conversation. Again, Game 2 tonight, Reds at Marlins, 6:40 the first pitch, 6:10 coverage begins on your Reds on Radio affiliate station, whether it's here in Cincinnati or 1410 ESPN Radio in Dayton. Martinez on the mound tonight, and then Brady Singer will be on the mound tomorrow afternoon for that 1:10 first pitch to close out the series with the Marlins before an off day on Thursday, and then they turn their attention towards the Rockies. That series starts on Friday night with Andrew Abbott on the mound there. All right, we'll step away for a few moments. We'll turn our attention towards the NFL draft and the Cincinnati Bengals. Duke Tobin was asked about his thoughts on how free agency went. He was pleased. Were you? We'll discuss that comment and more as we're just days away from the NFL draft. We'll be right back. All right, we welcome you back off the bench, presented by UDF. Jocelyn Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliott Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Duke Tobin addressed the media yesterday. Of course, was asked about their mindset and their plan heading into the draft this weekend. Obviously, recapping a lot of recap questions regarding their activity during free agency. A little underwhelming there. We talked about the Reds and their underwhelming offseason when it came to adding free agents. I think that you could say pretty much the same thing about the Cincinnati Bengals. It's funny because it's been a successful offseason, successful for the Bengals thus far, because you obviously got the contracts done with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. Obviously, Gesicki. Obviously, there's a big question mark with what the future holds, obviously, for Trey Hendrickson. Not really Trey Hendrickson, but the contract, moreover, whether they get an extension done with him there. But there was a lot that was discussed yesterday. A lot of questions were kind of thrown in the direction of Duke Tobin. The one that caught my attention the most, you brought up earlier the fact that the Browns and Giants are both kicking the tires on potentially moving back in the draft with their first-round selections. Of course, with the second, and do the Giants have the fifth or the sixth? Is it the Giants, are they sitting at 5 or 6?
They're picking third.
They're picking third. Okay, so no, 5 or 6. They're picking
Titans,
third.
Browns,
My
Giants.
bad. So no, with that being said, the Bengals, Duke Tobin was just talking about the amount of draft picks that they have. He says right now we have 6 picks, and we'd like to have a few more. Well, for you to have a few more, that means one of those 6 picks you would have to part ways with. And you would have to part ways with a high enough draft pick to be able to justify getting more picks in this year's draft, unless you're swapping picks, which wouldn't make a whole lot of sense at this point. When you heard that, what was your initial reaction? Do you anticipate the Bengals giving up one of these picks to accrue a couple more in this year's draft?
I was like a kid on Christmas. That Duke Tobin press conferences are usually brutal listens. This quote was phenomenal. I mean, Casey and I have been talking about how bad this team needs to trade back in this draft for months, and just basically ignoring it on mock drafts and draft talk, because the Bengals don't do that. They just don't operate that way, and they don't normally care about the amount of assets they have going into the draft. They're just comfortable with what they got. It doesn't seem to be the case this year. It seems like Duke Tobin understands how important this draft is, and that they need to get more assets to attack a really deep class. That's another reason why it's so important this year. I wouldn't be so gung-ho on the Bengals trading back if I didn't have faith in the middle rounds of this class. How many times talking about the 2025 draft have I said it's so deep you're going to be able to get multiple starters? That's what the Bengals will be doing by trading back from 17 to, say, 31 with the Eagles, who have been reported as being interested in trading up, or 28 with the Commanders, who are interested in trading up. By moving back 10 spots, does it take off some of those studs that could potentially be falling from the top 15? Absolutely. But that's a trade I'm willing to make for a 3rd or 4th round pick that gets me another starter this year. Maybe that's the second guard we get to take, to not have to start Lucas Patrick or Cody Ford.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the luxury pick at running back, getting someone that's a little bit better with the 6th pick instead of the 5th pick that we have. Maybe that's the ability that we had in our mock draft to take that wide receiver that falls and is a really exciting player. Adding more assets for the Bengals really frees them up with what the corner they've backed themselves into, with the team need being so pronounced going in. They have to draft pass rush. They have to draft pass protection, and they need more picks in order to have some more fun, be able to go best player available, which is something else they mentioned yesterday. Bengals director of player personnel indicated that the Bengals are likely to go with best player available at pick 17, and this is something that I normally love, but scared me pretty drastically, because I don't know if the Bengals have that luxury anymore.
Yeah.
That's what you should do. But when you don't sign a lineman worth a damn in free agency, and you don't sign any edge rushers to pair with Trey Hendrickson, you can't go best player available. You have to draft the best guard or the best edge rusher on the board, and that's how you get a Billy Price situation.
Yeah, if I were the Bengals, I wouldn't trade back just because I think the Bengals need this pick. I don't want to trust the organization, who has been historically unable to draft, to get a pick later than the pick that they currently have and make that work. I understand what everybody's saying. I understand that. But for me, if we can get somebody that's better with 17 than we're going to get later back, then yeah, I'm going to take the first pick available that we have. It just doesn't make sense to me to trade back when you so desperately need the Bengals to be great. If I trusted them to be good at drafting players, then this wouldn't be a question. But I don't trust them to draft well.
So wouldn't you like to give them more at-bats?
More at-bats, but more at-bats later on in the game when you're already down a run.
I think 17 to 20, you can get just as good of impact starters in the 2nd and 3rd round.
I think that's more than fair. I just don't trust him to do it, and it's up to the Bengals to prove me wrong.
If I can add my tidbit here, I think it's also just the timing factor as well. I don't necessarily mind a trade back during the draft when I can see the board and see who's available, because it makes sense to trade back. If you've got 5 guys you like and you can trade back 3 spots, then you do that. You go get that extra pick, and you still got 2 guys you're comfortable with at whatever pick 20 then at that point if you're trading back 3 spots. But you get my point. I agree with Jacob in the idea that there's a lot of depth in the second and third round. We both agreed that trading back was kind of like the ideal scenario for this team to be able to get as many picks as possible. I think also to pair that with the idea that we've heard reports that they don't care about character concerns just opens up the board that much more to what we thought might not be possible. The Mike Greens and the James Pierce Jr.'s of the world that have those character concerns, the Walter Nolans, they're available. And maybe before we might not have thought that. So I think trading back makes a lot of sense for the Bengals. I personally wouldn't do it today. I would wait till the draft day to make that move, because also teams are going to be more desperate to make a move on that day. I think the Bengals notoriously won't make a deal that's not benefiting them the most. Just historically speaking, that's just how it's been. So I think that it makes more sense to wait, but it's the smart thing to do to get more at-bats, as Jacob put it, to get more swings, to try to get a guy that can start for this team, just simply because of the depth of the draft, the positions of need that they have. Personally, I want them to go BPA, but it's hard to do that with 6 picks. It's really hard to do that with 6 picks. I've been trying to rack my brain around how you can do it, and unless you feel comfortable with, like what Jacob said, rolling out a Lucas Patrick or a Cody Ford day one as your right guard or left guard, there's not many ways to really slice 6 picks to fill in all the needs and get the depth that you need. So for me, I think it makes sense to trade back anywhere between 5 picks is probably the most I would go back. Anywhere more than that, you're getting into the spots where like the Ravens are.
Unless you get 2 or 3 picks.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on how much compensation you get to. But you get into that area where these teams don't care about those character concerns as well, like the Ravens, then it gets a little more dicey. But, yeah, trading back makes a lot of sense to me.
Another team reportedly interested in trading up right in that range. You said that 5 or so pick range, the Denver Broncos. So reportedly the Commanders, Eagles, and Broncos, 3 teams behind the Bengals, interested in trading up. If they make a move, at least right now, it seems like it would be one of those 3 teams. Not a lot of teams reported moving up. A lot of teams reportedly trying to move down. I think the question has to be asked, what are you moving up for? I think if the Broncos or say the Eagles are wanting to move up for a tight end, say a Colston Loveland, then 17 might be a perfect spot for them. The Broncos have also been reported interested in Ashton Genty, in which case the Bengals are nowhere near a range to draft him. They'd be looking to move much closer to the top 10. So, I think what these teams want is certainly also in play as well, to whether the Bengals would be interested in, or they would be interested in talking with the Bengals about pick 17. I don't know, but I think the best case scenario, honestly, is to trade Trey Hendrickson for a late first-round pick with either the Commanders or the Eagles, like we saw in the Ringer mock draft. And the Eagles reportedly interested in trading for a veteran difference maker as well. But if not, I am very, very happy at potentially moving back.
Yeah, just the scenario that I gave to Jacob was, how much better are you in the future of the Bengals having a Walter Nolan and a James Pierce Jr.? Like, let's just say you did trade that first-round pick with Commanders for Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah.
You might lose some production there, obviously, losing the best pass rusher in the NFL, but you have team control of 2 guys that you're expecting to be pretty damn good pass rushers, and then, you're expecting some development from the other guys, and it's better to have it come from 2 guys than 1, because they can't focus all their attention on Trey like they've been doing the last couple seasons. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like the idea of them somehow getting a second first rounder would be amazing in my opinion. I know a lot of people would be very upset with it, but I think the payoff of having it long term figured out, the solution there is just so beneficial for this team moving forward.
Yeah, in 2025, would it be lopsided between, say, a James Pearson, a Mike Greene versus Trey Hendrickson in terms of stats? Absolutely. I'm sure it would be very hard for Bengals fans to watch. Do you think James Pearson, Mike Greene have maybe more sacks and more QB pressures from their age 21 season to their age 26 season than Trey Hendrickson from age 31 to age 36? Maybe. I think it's very, very close.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's certainly a move that I would, be interested in making if you can move Trey for a first-round pick, because I know how impatient Bengals fans are right now. I'm right there with you. We've missed the playoffs the last 2 years with Joe Burrow playing great football and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. It's frustrating. But this isn't a one-year window. This is a team that, has T. Higgins locked up, has Jamar Chase locked up, has Joe Burrow locked up. This is a team that, we're trying to be a perennial contender. And can this team contend this year, swapping Trey Hendrickson for one of those guys? Absolutely. They certainly can. And can they contend and maybe even be better in the years in the immediate future? I really do think so. So I would be pretty eager to try to get Trey traded for premium value before the draft starts. I'm out on moving him after the draft.
Yeah, I am too. And just to also keep in mind too, the draft, or not the draft capital, excuse me, the cap space that they would have. Currently it's sitting at 70 or 80 million going into next season. And that's before obviously getting anything done with Trey, in which we talked about how much that would be. It's like a $35 million payday for him. So next year would be like you're only working with 40 instead of 70, 80. I think it's a no-brainer. You walk into next season with 80 million and you can really start handing out some big contracts for any difference maker that wasn't able to get it done this season.
But didn't you say that, and this isn't like an argument, but that was like the mindset of the Bengals heading into this offseason. Everyone anticipated that they had a ton of cap space.
Yeah, but they had to pay Jamar and T and Trey. This next season, there's no one like Cam Taylor-Britt, and that's it.
That's part of why we were saying there's no excuse not to pay these guys right now. It's because you look down the line on this team, there's not a lot of guys you're looking to extend. I mean, maybe they tear it up next year and surprise you, and you give them a deal that makes sense for both sides, like we did kind of Joseph Osai this year with the 1-year extension, BJ Hill, an extension to stay here in Cincinnati. But there's no one on this team that's not signed right now, with the exclusion of the current Trey Hendrickson situation, that I would be losing sleep over not having long-term here in Cincinnati, which is not a great place to be.
Right. And that's kind of our point, though, is, if things were to go awry, you make that trade and things go terribly wrong and the defense doesn't improve at all, you didn't just, take all your future cap space away by giving Trey Hendrickson a deal. You now have 80 million and the future to play with to get a difference maker that didn't get paid somewhere else. So I think it makes a lot of sense. I know people will hate that, but I think it's a smart move if they can get it done. Without getting a first-round pick, though, I don't think it makes a lot of sense because
I don't necessarily disagree, but I would just bump that back to maybe top 40 or so.
Yeah. Because if they get like a James Pierce Jr. with that pick, then it makes all the sense in the world to do that. But if not, then it's it depends on what they pick.
Absolutely, excluding Trey Hendrickson. I think there's a reasonable expectation that the pick at 17, if it is a pass rusher, defensive player, is going to be the best player on this defense this year. Yeah. If it's Walter Nolan, if it's James Pierce, if it's Mike Greene, if it's Jihad Campbell, whenever he's fully healthy, I'm pretty confident in one of those guys, whoever they pick out of those guys, unless there's a surprise or one of the two defensive names we said we don't want in Shamar Stewart or from Georgia.
Michael,
absolutely. If it's one of those guys, I certainly don't agree, but any of the guys that we've talked about a lot on this show, I'm confident in them being our best defensive player next year. So if you can get two of them, what a great spot to be in.
Yeah.
Which is important, obviously. One thing, Dan Horde he put out a tweet that was highlighting his 5 big takeaways from that press conference. We'll read these, react to it quickly as we wrap up the radio side, and then continue on. We'll stay here on Chatterbox Sports YouTube. But Duke Tubman was asked about looking for immediate contributors, and this kind of goes to what you're talking about, Jake. Like, whether it's a good or a bad thing that your best defensive player is someone that you just selected in this draft, that's a separate conversation. But when it comes to looking for immediate contributors, Duke Tobin says, gone are the days of taking a guy for 3 years from now. In my opinion, those days are gone. You need quick development and some production out of your young guys. So we're looking for that. That's just the nature of what the NFL is right now. And it's especially what the nature of the NFL is now for teams who have put forth a lot of money towards select positions like quarterback, wide receiver, and others, which they have. So that's important as well. So that wraps it up for us on the radio side. We'll continue with this. We'll stay here live on the Chatterbox stream. But until tomorrow on radio, this has been Off the Bench, presented by UDF. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by UDF. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rain, Jacob Tissett. That press, and by the way, tomorrow we do have Jay Paterno and Jason Fitz on.
Awesome.
So it'll be more draft to do. We spent a lot of time on Reds today. We'll obviously react to whatever happens tonight with Nick Martinez and the Reds tomorrow, but we will have Jay and who did I just say? Fitz. So,
also, if you don't get your draft fill from Off the Bench today, new Chatterbox Bengals posted late last night. We tweeted about it early this morning. Gridiron Grading joined us in about 45 minutes talking about perfect fits for the Bengals, late round finds. If you're hanging out with some friends for the draft, watch this beforehand. You'll get some good mid-round names that you can drop and trick your friends into thinking you're really educated about the draft. Because those guys, man, those Gridiron Grading guys are legit. They know what they're talking about. Graded over 700 players, have their Google Sheet available for everyone on their Twitter, so make sure you go check that out too. But then we'll be live Thursday night, live for the whole first round, live from the first pick all the way through pick 32. I'm not going to speak out of turn here, but I think we're trying to figure out some people to join us during that stream as well. Pop on for a few minutes, join Craig and I, so we're not hogging the airwaves for a full 4 hours. So that'll be a good time. Make sure you join us then.
I heard Kirby and Trace are just dying for more stream time. They just haven't been doing enough.
Maybe.
To be fair, Craig has been doing a lot of those. Chatterbox Reds after every single
Craig's
game.
a warrior, man.
So there you go. But hey, that Duke Tobin presser yesterday, a lot of things that you liked. Anything that stood out that had you scratching your head a little bit too? Like when he was asked, I mean, to be fair, what is he supposed to say here? A lot of people were a little annoyed that he said he thought they had a very good free agency. I think a lot of people disagreed with that, but to be fair, I always defend people in those situations. Like, what is he supposed to say? I think it went horrible. We sucked at that. What was your take?
That's what I've pushed back on. I think they had a fine free agency as long as you include the extensions. I think Duke Tobin probably stood up there at the combine and said his whole piece, and he left the stage and he was like, "Oh, please, Mike Brown, please give me the money to sign these guys."
Yeah.
So the fact that he got Jamar and T done at record-breaking levels that the Bengals don't usually give him the ability to do, I think he is so relieved that this offseason played out the way it did. So whether Bengals fans are happy or not, I think Duke Tobin is over the moon with the ability he was given this offseason to actually control the roster, actually say who's going to stay and who's not, because we talk about Jesse Bates all the time on this show. We talked about Joe Mixon and him leaving. I bet Duke Tobin didn't want any of those guys to leave. But financially, he either wasn't given the ability to extend them or was told it was time to move on. GMs want to keep great players. They don't care about the cash spend. That's where the owners come in. So I think he was really relieved with how this offseason went, given how little ability he was given in the past to do what he's done. You talked about there that he said that they aren't going to draft for the future. They're going to draft for right now. He followed that up by saying, I don't think our team is one of those that absorbs a bunch of rookie starters. We've got starters across the board. I don't know if Duke Tobin and I watched the same Bengals team last year. There's 22 positions. We might have 9 starters.
Yeah.
I mean, this team is looking at 6 picks in the draft. We're hoping 4 or 5 of them could start week 1. At least that's the consensus from the fan base and analysts everywhere else. Doesn't seem like that's the feeling in the building. Another thing that kind of stems off of that, he said that they have immense faith in Chris Jenkins and McKinley Jackson, the 2 D tackles they took last year, though he did say they are prioritizing adding a defensive tackle, and we should expect that over the weekend. That would be a very good news for the Bengals, especially in the first round with Walter Nolan or Derek Harmon if you go a little bit further down the board. But I think overall, I'm going to take nothing that Duke Tobin says as truth. I fell into that trap at the Combine. He said a lot of really fun stuff, and I got really excited. And then I guess technically most of it came true, but not at all in the timeline that he was presenting. So, if that was the best press conference ever and it turned out to be 3, really tough months, this was a pretty bad one. So maybe we're going to have a really great draft. I don't know. There's 2 sides to every coin, but certainly not what most Bengals fans wanted to hear from Duke Tobin yesterday.
Kind of sounds like you're in on Duke Tobin now.
I've kind of always been in on Duke Tobin. He falls into him and David Bell are riding the same 2-person bike.
I see.
And they are anything that's put on their plate, it's not their fault.
I see.
Mike Brown, until this year, never gave Duke Tobin the ability to compete.
I guess that's fair. It's just at some point when you're here for 400 years, and nothing's really changed about the way you do things.
How many GMs do you think got hired in 1995 and have not added a single scout? Again, I don't think Duke Tobin has 4 scouts if it's up to him.
Yeah, that's fair. You might be right. You might be right. And the answer to your question probably 0.
That was matching.
So yeah, I mean, it's to each their own. I didn't take too much away out of those press conferences. The way I don't take anything out of any press conference really. It's just coach speak. It's just business speak. They're not going to give you anything that you want to hear. But also simultaneously making you think that you heard something good. You know what I mean? Like they're not going to go out and he's not going to go out and say that, oh, the Bengals are going to do this and that, and they're going to go trade up in this at the draft, and we're going to move on from Trey, and here's how we're going to do. Like, he's not going to give you any juicy stuff. He's just going to give you enough to keep you trudging along.
What was it about? You saw that clip about the Eagles that were looking for a veteran pass rusher,
veteran difference maker,
a difference maker, and how that could be an opportunity that the Bengals could potentially not expose but like take advantage of, or at least partake in. You said it a little bit ago that, look, if Trey Hendrickson is a Bengal post-draft, you want him to remain a Bengal, obviously heading into the season, but you're not opposed to them moving on from Trey Hendrickson now that draft week is officially here. It just needs to be done for draft capital for this year's draft. Could that Eagles scenario that you just mentioned be the most realistic one if there was an opportunity?
I still think it's very pie in the sky to be hoping for a first-round pick for Trey Hendrickson by Thursday night. I think that ship probably sailed the week after his trade request. If you're going to get that kind of return, I think he had to make that trade earlier this offseason. However, the Eagles are the one team I think is the most realistic, just because of how desperate is the wrong word, because they're a contender every year and they're reigning Super Bowl champions.
Yeah.
I think it's just aggressive and bored. Does Howie Roseman just get bored and trade for star players? I don't know what it is, but they were linked very, very heavily to Myles Garrett when he was on the trade block before re-signing with the Browns. If any team's going to make a shocking blockbuster trade for Trey Hendrickson, I think it's Howie Roseman and the Eagles. Not to mention that they are picking 31. That's the other thing you have to look at if you're the Bengals trading Trey Hendrickson, or if you're a Bengals fan looking at prospective trade partners. You need someone in the back half of the first round if you're going to get a first-round pick. You're not getting, 8, 9, 10 for Trey Hendrickson. You need someone, like we said originally, the Commanders at 28. We thought that made a lot of sense in the back half of the first round. Maybe the Lions picking back there as well. But it seems like the team that's most interested in both moving up and has been linked to some of these big-name free agents and trade partners before, it would be the Eagles. So I think that's the Bengals' only realistic shot at getting a first-round pick for him by Thursday.
I'd much rather them do that, if I'm a Bengals fan, I'd much rather them do that with Hendrickson to get that draft capital than to trade back in the draft. Because then you can keep every pick you have now at the level of which they're at, and then you add more draft capital on top of it as opposed to move back to get an earlier pick later in the draft. But they can be creative here. I mean, if you're going to go young, go young.
My Trey Hendrickson rankings, number 1, trade him before the draft for a top 40 pick. Big fall off. Number 2, play him on a contract and let him walk for free. And then a very close third, trade him after the draft. I think I could be convinced it's better to trade him after the draft than it is to play him this year and let him walk.
You think so? I don't know. I think if you let him play this year, you're giving your team this season a better chance than to succeed. And to be quite honest, I don't care about. I know this the last time I went off on Trey Hendrickson, people didn't like that. Trey Hendrickson's not worth $35 million on a multi-year deal. He's just not in my eyes. I think he's a very good defender. I think he's been a large part of the Bengals defense over the past several years now. But I'm not confident enough in his ability to be a contributor long term here. I think this season, play your heart out, give us what you got. If they want to rearrange that contract for a 1-year deal, do it, and we'll see what we can get from it. I don't know what you can get with a trade after, because I feel like teams would want him for the draft. Like teams would want a draft trade.
You'd be trading him to someone that missed out on an edge rusher.
Correct.
Like someone that wanted an edge rusher and didn't get one.
I see. So maybe.
Like we're seeing with Kirk Cousins, how the Falcons are waiting on him until someone misses out on a quarterback. And then you're back on the table talking about a first-round pick or a second-round pick for, obviously, 2026. Does that help the Bengals more than one season of Trey Hendrickson? Because that's 4 to 5 seasons of a top 50 pick.
My only argument against it was Trey Hendrickson a Bengals draft pick? No. Trey Hendrickson was not.
Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins?
Yeah, but Chase
Brown?
They don't play
and Logan Wilson?
Logan Wilson. I'm just saying, I don't trust the Bengals to draft, and that's been my biggest gripe over the last 4 or 5 years now. I just don't trust them. I don't trust them to do it. I know what I have in Trey Hendrickson. That's a set commodity. You don't know what you get when you're drafting. When the Bengals draft, if this was the Eagles, it'd be a different situation, but it's not the Eagles. We're the Cincinnati Bengals.
I just don't like when you have the guy we have playing quarterback. I don't like to operate in one-year windows. That's the only difference.
Yeah.
You certainly have a better chance to win a Super Bowl this year with Trey Hendrickson on your team than a 2026 first-round pick. No one's arguing that. I don't like to operate in one-year windows when I think we are going to be a contender for 5 years.
But I think a one-year window is okay when you've missed out on back-to-back seasons. Like, I think the Bengals are desperate. Like,
I'm just not there.
I think you're looking.
I think the fans are desperate because the fans are bored of not playing in the playoffs. I don't think that even comes close to permeating the facility.
You don't think that comes close in there when you miss the playoffs back-to-back seasons?
I don't think it should. I think it would be a very big mistake if they act desperate.
It's fair.
Off the bench, presented by UDF. That when you go back to that T. Higgins contract, the fact that they can get out of it after year one, was that like an emergency release valve? If they say, okay, Joe, we're going all in, putting all of our money on offense, we're going to improve this defense through the draft. If that doesn't work, is there a scenario where you think, all right, we did it your way, Joe, and it didn't work? Back-to-back years where high-powered offense, not enough defense, we got to go in the direction of putting all our money on defense. Is there any possibility that that's revisited a year from now when we're talking about all the chaos that we thought was put behind them with T. Higgins? Could that be revisit itself a year from now?
The first out in T's contract is in 2027. It's after
it's 2 years.
2 years at $58 million. So I don't think there's any way the Bengals do that. I think there's a route. The most likely situation where they cut him after year two would be if he played really, really well these first 2 seasons and you added an extension to get him paid more if the cap keeps going up and the receiver market shifts drastically. I don't know. I don't think there's any way the Bengals would move on from him after 2026.
No.
If you would, then trade him last offseason.
Yeah, if their plan is to get rid of him soon, then they shouldn't have signed him and you should have traded him.
Also, at this point, if you get rid of T. Higgins, Joe's done.
Yeah, it's
like you're shipping them out together.
Are you though?
I think.
Weren't they? I mean,
if I'm Joe Burrow, I'm not coming back to play for Cincinnati if we cut T. Higgins after 2 years.
Not cut. Trade.
Well, you'd have to cut him.
And I don't want this to turn into a thing. I'm just I'm curious about it is because there was still the dynamic. Many kind of believe too that Jamar Chase did kind of strong arm them into getting that deal done.
Oh yeah, he said as much.
So all right, well we got the deal done, but now you have no more leverage, Jamar, to force us to keep him. So I just, like I said, I think this is an interesting experiment with the Bengals where they're like, all right, we're going to financially go all in on offense, and hopefully that all these pieces come together, marginal free agents and defense, and then obviously, hopefully you hit in the draft. But that kind of goes to that window, the urgency period too, where acting with a little bit more urgency all around the roster as opposed to the urgency of keeping Jamar and T. And then it was like, all right, we kept Jamar and T. And then it's like, well, now we're just putting all of our eggs in the draft basket. How confident are you that they're going to hit enough in this draft to close the gap on some of the deficiencies they had last year then?
You know my answer. I'm not confident at all. So if they're able to get any, and I'm talking literally any position as an upgrade this year in the draft, if you're able to get a starter or two, then it's a win by me. But I don't have a lot of faith in them being able to draft successfully. They haven't been able to do it unless it's been a gimme pick, which I'm not going to discredit, drafting Joe Burrow with the first overall pick when you have that opportunity.
GMs certainly get credit for screwing it up.
That's right. But I'm just not gonna go into the wagon where I'm gonna, And by the way, the Bengals, Amarius Mims was a great draft pick. Like last year, you can walk away from that draft and okay, they did all right.
Last year's draft was unbelievable.
So I that's what I'm saying. There's a chance that I'm wrong on this, and I'd love to be wrong. If they draft a couple of legit starters this year, I'm gonna be over the moon. I'm not gonna bank on it.
When do you think the last draft was where the Bengals didn't get multiple starters?
Good starters, I should have said.
Well, Amarius Mims, Chris Jenkins, Eric All. I would say that was unanimously viewed as a very good draft class last year. Year before, Jordan Battle started half the year at safety, certainly did again this year. Chase Brown, Andre Yoshivas, I would certainly categorize that as good haul in the later rounds of the draft class. Dax Hill got hurt this year. He was going to start at outside corner the entirety of the year. Cam Taylor-Britt certainly had a rough year this year, but was viewed going into last season as a stud corner, going to be an all-pro caliber player. Joseph Osai just got a second contract with the Bengals, third-round pick in 2021. Obviously, Jamar Chase at 5. Evan McPherson, rough year last year, fifth-round pick for a kicker that got us to a Super Bowl. The year before that, you got Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither. That's 4 good players there. Jonah Williams started at tackle all 4 years of his rookie contract. I think he was good. Some people do not. Jermaine Pratt, multiple-year captain. This team, you go Jesse Bates, Sam Hubbard the year before in 2018. This team hasn't left a draft class without multiple significant players in a long time. I know overall it hasn't necessarily been pretty, but the way they've handled the offseasons over the last 5 years has turned this team from a laughingstock that couldn't get out of the first round with Andy Dalton to a team that's viewed as a Super Bowl contender after not making the playoffs the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That means something. That's a significant organizational shift. Bengals have 6 picks this year. They have to leave this draft with 4 players you're confident in starting week 1. I think that's the line for me, and I think that's a reasonable line to have. This draft is very, very deep. You can get players at positions the Bengals need in this class in the 4th, 5th rounds. I think the Bengals can get a running back as an undrafted free agent that we're talking about as a significant contributor as running back 2 going into week 1. I think that's certainly a possibility. So if the Bengals can leave this draft with 4 starting caliber players or guys that you're convinced are going to contribute at a significant level, I'm all in.
We only have a few more minutes before we wrap it up, but I don't know if you did touch on this yesterday, but your Bearcats, from a college basketball perspective, have been pretty active. You happy and satisfied with how that's been going?
Yeah, they've been tearing it up in the portal. So and that goes for the football program as well. So I'm very, very pleased with the way Wes Miller's handling this offseason so far. You got to win. It all comes down to, can you win games when the regular season comes around. And that's the biggest hurdle we'll have, because last year, coming into the season, that Bearcats basketball group should have been a tournament team. Everybody thought it was a tournament team. The polls thought they were a tournament team. All the writers thought they were a tournament team. And then they started playing basketball, and it's like, wait a minute, they don't play offense. So this year, it's going to be a different look. I do think they were one premier player away last year, one NBA level. I know it's hard to get that, but you're going to have an NBA-level prospect playing for your team next season. You're going to have a go-to scorer in Shana Bayev. You have to take advantage of that. The center from UCF they just got yesterday, going to be a massive upgrade over Aziz. A massive upgrade. They look good, So if they're able to play a little bit better, if Jizzle and Dede are able to have somebody to pass the ball to, unlike they were unable to do it this year, then I think the Bearcats are, again, going to be a tournament team. It just comes down to, can Wes Miller coach a team to win games? Hasn't been the case.
We've known he's a good recruiter, but their NIL has to be pretty solid as well, because it's not just that he's recruiting good players. Like, they're getting some big-name players out of the portal, too. It's not like they're just getting some, mid-majors coming over. They're getting some of the top big-boy players out there, so either way. All right, we're wrapping it up. Is there anything else to close it out? I know you said there's new Chatterbox Bengals out, correct?
Yes, new Chatterbox Bengals out, posted it last night, and then we'll be live on Thursday for the entirety of the first round. It does seem like, though, Elliot, April's kind of the Bearcats' month.
It is. That's when they play the best ball.
You got, the historic crown.
The historic crown. And people forget that
where does this offseason?
I think the exposure of the crown is what put them in position to get these players.
Where does this offseason rank among the Wes Miller offseasons? Because he's good at those.
This offseason ranks probably
pretty high.
Maybe the highest.
The highest Wes Miller offseason. Wow. And we know he's an offseason champ.
So that's our guy. That's our general manager, Wes Miller.
Do you think they can get higher in the rankings than they were this year before they exploded?
Yeah, I do. I think
Okay.
I think they make
Get up to 12 before you lose 15
crack,
straight
Yeah,
conference
maybe
games?
crack the top 15 before
Ooh,
they
boy.
start blowing games away.
Oh
But
boy, that'd be fun.
that's what we got. The historic crown, the UC.
As a team, we all have the crown on.
That's right.
Casey, show yours off. There you go. I feel bad it's messing up your new haircut, though.
No, that's why I was trying to tuck it all in there.
There's that. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone. Hit the like on the way out. Like the stream on the way out. We appreciate that. We'll be back tomorrow. Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, will be with us tomorrow, and then Jay Paterno will jump on with us. I know he was supposed to come on last week. I had a family emergency I had to attend to, so thank you guys for being patient with that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that wraps it up. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by UDF.